what you face. God doesn't do anything randomly. He's precise. He's detailed. If that valley wasn't necessary, you wouldn't be there. If that disappointment, that setback wasn't a part of God's plan, if it wasn't going to add something to your life, God would have never allowed it. Now don't try to figure out everything, why that happens to you. That's going to get you confused. Just stay in faith. Keep a good attitude, knowing that everything that comes your way, somehow, some way, God is going to use that to your advantage. When David was 17 years old, he went out to face Goliath in the valley of Elah. It's not a coincidence that he was in the valley. We see this principle. Goliath, of course, was bigger, stronger, more experienced. It looked impossible, like David didn't have a chance. But again, we see God turn a valley of defeat into a valley of blessing. David took a slingshot and he knocked Goliath out. David didn't have a sword, so he went over and took Goliath's sword and finished him off. David left that valley not only with more experience, more confidence, more respect, but he left with the sword of Goliath. Fast forward years later, King Saul was trying to kill David. Saul was jealous of David. David was on the run. He left in such a hurry, he didn't have time to get his sword. He had no way to protect himself. David ran to the next city. He went to the temple and saw some people he knew. He told them he was on assignment for the king and asked if they had a sword he could borrow. They said, David, all we have is the sword of Goliath, the Philistine who you killed in the valley. Notice something that had happened in the valley was now instrumental in David reaching the next level of his destiny. If David had not gained that sword in the valley, he would have gotten stuck. Friends, God has it all figured out. The valley you face today may not be for today. It may be for years down the road. But if you didn't learn what you needed to learn, if you didn't gain what you needed to gain, you wouldn't be prepared for that next level. Don't complain about the valley. There's a blessing in that valley. Later on, you're going to use the experience, the confidence. Like David, so to speak, that sword is going to be waiting for you. A few years after Victoria and I were married, we sold our house and moved into this other place. One morning, there was a knock on our front door. I answered it. A police officer was standing there. My heart started beating really fast. He kind of smiled and said in a joking way, handed me these papers and said, somebody really doesn't like you. I said, what do you mean? What is this? He said, you've been named in a lawsuit. Well, the people that bought our house were suing over the plumbing. They not only sued us, they sued the builder, the architect, the real estate agent, the plumber, everybody they could think of. We knew we weren't at fault. We didn't build a house. The plumbing had worked fine for us. But for those 6 months while we were in that lawsuit, I was sick to my stomach. I was so worried. At 26 years old, I thought that was the worst thing that could have ever happened to me. A few weeks later, I was going to have to give my deposition in front of a lawyer. I got all my documents, my papers. I studied, I prepared, got everything ready. So nervous. Went in and I gave my deposition. When I finished, I was so nauseated that I couldn't drive home. Had to have somebody come pick me up. Several months later, the whole lawsuit was thrown out and we were totally clear. I thought that was the biggest waste of my time and energy. So much unnecessary heartache and stress. I didn't see how anything could ever come productive out of that. But in every valley, you're gaining something. You may not realize it, but there's a purpose. 13 years later, we had acquired our new facility, like this place, the former Compaq Center. A company filed a lawsuit to try to keep us from moving in. This time, I wasn't dealing with a small plumbing problem. I was dealing with something that was critical to my destiny. When I went to give my deposition in front of a battery of high-powered attorneys, I wasn't the least bit nervous. I was confident. I was prepared. I had experience. I knew exactly what to expect.